This is our human body, the most magnificent piece of engineering on the planet. We're about to take a journey from the age of 10 to 50, using numbers to reveal our body's extraordinary story. From our first kiss,
It's a time when we go from being children to sexual human beings.
to how much sex we'll have,
Not very often.
Never enough. I don't think I ever have enough sex.
to the real differences between men and women.
It's not meant to say that any one is superior to the other, but it's just different.
It will revolutionize how we think about ourselves. And you'll never look in the mirror the same way again. Throughout our lives, our body is performing wonders. From conception to birth, from toddler to teenager, from adult to old age. By 10 years old, we've already achieved some great things. We've mastered skills, absorbed information, and grown to an average height of 4.5 feet. But now we're setting out to show the incredible transformations that our bodies must undergo, taking them from the age of 10 to 50. And this leg of the race is all about the battle of the sexes. It all begins when our brain triggers a tiny mechanism no larger than a pea, called the pituitary gland. This miniature organ brings about the greatest upheaval our bodies will ever experience. Puberty, transforming us into adults. And it does this by switching on some incredibly powerful chemicals, our sex hormones.
They're not visible. That's the problem with hormones. You cannot see them. You cannot touch them. But what we need to understand is that without hormones, we don't really exist.
Hormones are our chief administrators. They are constantly patrolling the body, checking and regulating every function.
Hormones are actually agents of change in the body. They affect the way we think, they affect the way we look, the way we interact with each other, and certainly the way our lives unfold.
And when our three sex hormones, estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone are switched on, hold on to your seats, because things are about to get a whole lot more interesting.
Puberty is the time when we go from being children, asexual, to sexual human beings, which is very important because if we don't make that transition, our species would die out very quickly.
Odessa is 12, and for her, this transformation into puberty is already underway. One of the first things hormones will do is make her grow faster than at any other time in her life.
About the time of puberty, there is an enormous rush in terms of bone growth. We get a huge increase in the length of our bones. So this is our sort of shooting up phase.
In just 1 year, Odessa will grow as much as 3.5 inches, about the size of this heel. By the end of puberty, she will have grown a whopping 9.8 inches, which would be the equivalent of donning a pair of swanky platforms this big. And Odessa's body fat will increase by even more, 120%. During her peak weight gain, she can put on 1.5 pounds a month. That's the weight of 3 packs of butter, like this. And over a year, this would come to 18.3 pounds, enough to spread over 1,600 slices of bread. Yet the amount of hormones needed to bring about a change in our bodies is 100 times smaller than a single grain of sand. Imagine making a dose of hormones for every girl on Earth. Amazingly, you would only need a pile this big, about 7.5 pounds worth. But hormones don't just make us bigger. They literally transform us into adults.
The girl starts growing breasts, she starts getting hair in her pubis and in her armpits. She starts thinking differently, she gets her period, and she starts becoming a woman, meaning she starts ovulating and she starts being ready to reproduce.
At 12 years old, Odessa's ovaries already contain 300,000 egg cells. And now, one of them will be released each month. The egg can develop into an embryo if it's fertilized. If not, it's replaced by another the next month. In her lifetime, a woman will release about 400 eggs. But there's more to this roller coaster ride than physical transformations. By the time a girl reaches 15, like Frankie here, her hormones have begun to affect dramatically the way she sees the world. And that, combined with her changing body, can open up a whole new frontier of priorities.
They're trying to override what their body, their hormones are saying in order to fit in. Perfect example would be young girls developing anorexia and bulimia because they're afraid to move on to the new body.
This is probably the most extreme reaction there is, but the developing woman has a great deal to contend with. She'll sprout hair where she doesn't want it, and her skin becomes oilier. It can be a traumatic time, and many never forget it.
One day I could look in the mirror and be like, wow, like I look really fit, like I look really good. And then the next day you look in the mirror and you're like, what the hell happened?
Just the awkwardness that you have like during puberty and stuff.
Getting really big hips really quickly.
Never having clothes that fit well.
Pimples are the worst. They change and they come at the worst of times.
Some teenage girls experience fatigue, mood swings, and irritability, which can lead to tears. A lot of tears. Up to the age of 12, boys and girls cry about the same amount. But then, as a girl's hormones flood in, she begins to cry more. And by the age of 18, girls are crying 4 times more than boys. Not surprisingly, we cry most when we're sad. 49% of our tears. And 10% when we are angry. But 7% of our tears are out of sympathy. 5% from anxiety. 4% from fear. And the good news, 21% out of happiness. Of course, tears are a small price to pay for the myriad of changes that await a teenage girl as she moves into womanhood. But what about the boys? Well, they too are about to undergo an alarming makeover. And when their testosterone is increased by 30 times, it's safe to say that all bets are off. It's often said that boys like action. But one thing's for certain. When their testosterone hormone kicks into gear, they're in for a hell of a ride.
Suddenly, the pituitary gland is sending messages and saying, wake up testes, start making testosterone.
And they do. In fact, a maturing boy's testosterone levels can rise by 30 times. This is a strong mix, but testosterone is such a powerful chemical that the amount of it in a boy's body is minuscule. Its concentration would be the equivalent of dissolving a single grain of salt into 60 pints of water. And if you add up the amount of testosterone inside every man on Earth, you would only end up with this amount, 76 pounds worth.
The real surge of male hormones occurs around the age of 13 or 14, which sends boys off on a completely different route from girls.
Will and John are 16 years old, and testosterone has been busy transforming their bodies for over 2 years now. For boys, the first signs of puberty are the testicles growing bigger. And they grow from 1.5 cubic centimeters to 20 cubic centimeters. That's 13 times larger. Then, a boy's penis starts growing, and by the age of 18, reaches an average length of 6.5 inches. But not long before then, boys have already begun setting up sperm-making factories. each producing 300 million sperm a day. In less than a month, a boy will have created more sperm than there are people on the planet. In their lifetimes, Will and John will each create enough sperm to populate this many planet Earths. 571 of them. But they're never going to achieve this unless they're able to fire them. And to do that, they need an erection. The average male has several each day, and while sleeping at night. Andy has an average of 7,700 ejaculations in his lifetime. But the question is, exactly how much semen does this add up to?
Perhaps a liter or two of semen.
2 gallons.
I'll say 3.5 gallons. 50 gallons?
60 gallons.
I'll just say a pool's worth of semen.
A few Olympic swimming pools.
An ocean. An ocean.
It may come as a disappointment to some, but in his lifetime, a man will have spent around 7 gallons of semen. But that's not the only thing teenage boys produce during puberty. They also start growing hair everywhere. Teenage boys like Carl here start growing hair in the pubic area, armpits, arms, chest, abdomen, and even the back. Hair will also appear on the face, growing out of 30,000 follicles. That means a boy throughout puberty could be sprouting up to 30 new hairs a day. Just imagine the amount of stubble Carl will have to remove en route to his 50th birthday. 30,000 hairs each day, each growing 0.4 of a millimeter. In fact, Carl better get used to shaving, because by the time he's 50, he will have dragged his razor blade over an area this big, about 383 square yards. Unless, of course, he doesn't want to bother with shaving, in which case he could cultivate the same style as Nicholas Gascoigne here. Beards are the fastest growing hair on the body. If Nicholas never trimmed his beard, it could grow up to 30 feet long. If every man in the world did this, then it would be possible to weave a rope from their beards 30,000 strands thick and long enough to wrap around the planet 775 times. But when it comes to the pros and cons of excess hair, not everyone is in agreement.
I do not find hairy men sexy. Sexy. Depends on where the hair is.
On their back, no. On their chest is okay.
Well, if they're all hairy on the chest, no.
Off-putting.
I find hairy men sexy.
But sexy or not, hair is only a tiny part of a teenage boy's rapid transformation. His body changes so fast, he can become hard to recognize, as his jaw, brow, chin, and nose quickly morph from one look to another. And when it comes to raw growth, he'll outperform his female counterparts. From the start of puberty, a boy will grow about a full foot taller. Imagine how many pairs of jeans we'd go through if puberty lasted for 10 years. Most men would end up over 8 feet tall. But it's not just about the legs and torso. All over his body, a teenage boy is growing. His feet take the lead as they jump through the shoe sizes. Then his hands follow. And bones aren't the only thing gaining length. His vocal cords become 60% longer and also wider. They now vibrate at a lower frequency, making his voice drop in pitch by a whole octave. It's a bit like converting this cello into a double bass. But there's another change awaiting any teenage boy, and it's not so welcome. Sweat. Hormones alter his perspiration, resulting in a more adult-smelling body odor. And under full exertion, he can fill a six-pack with sweat in just 1 hour. But he doesn't need to be in the gym to work up a bit of a stink. In fact, a boy's odor can appear at the most unwelcome times, especially when he senses fear, like right before a big event. His adrenaline hormone kicks in, and so do his sweat glands.
An adrenaline burst, which will cause sweaty palms, racing heart, faster breathing. So we get a little bit tongue-tied, perhaps, and show indications of stage fright.
But a boy's odor isn't the only thing that gets stronger. By 18, Carl here will have 50% more muscle and 50% less fat than a girl of the same age. These cans of spinach represent the weight of muscle a boy will develop during the course of his adolescence. That's 14 rippling pounds of it. But a boy rarely becomes quite the he-man he hopes, and his hormones often assail him in ways that are not at all welcome.
What things upset me is acne.
Well, you're never satisfied. When your body's constantly changing shape, you're never satisfied with it.
I was way too thin. It was really tough I was running around a lot, so it was really tough for me to put on weight.
But it's not just a boy's body that makes him different from a girl. He tends to develop the right side of his brain faster, resulting in what some experts believe are more attuned visual and spatial skills. In contrast, girls tend to develop the left side of their brain faster, leading to better communication skills. The age-old debate is whether these differences and others are because of our brains or our cultural conditioning.
I imagine a good deal of it has to do with nurture and culture and environment. At least I thought that until I had both boys and girls, and now I know that even if you rear them the same way, there are differences.
Contrary to what some may believe, girls don't talk more than boys. They both speak the same number of words a day, about 16,000 of them. But some studies indicate that women tend to be more articulate, using a wider vocabulary. Boys, on the other hand, have been shown to speak slower and in shorter sentences. It's hardly surprising, as testosterone can make teenage boys restless, giving them a short attention span and increased aggression. With so many chemicals directing our bodies, it's a miracle that boys and girls are ever able to communicate at all, let alone get together. But that's just what we're designed to do. Soon, our bodies will be leaving a trail of secret scents and signposts, and we'll never be the same again. Puberty transforms boys and girls into sexually charged beings, and it's not long before they start looking to get together. Libby is getting ready for an evening out. That means making sure that her 2 square yards of skin is clean. Not as easy as you think, because each square inch of it contains 32 million living organisms. That's almost the population of California, which means that there are more organisms living on each of us than there are people on the surface of the earth. Then we have to maintain our hair. Both men and women lose roughly 80 hairs a day. The good news is they can regenerate, and we do have a head start of about 100,000 of them that grow fast at 0.3 of a millimeter a day. Add them all up, and that's 33 yards worth every 24 hours. That means in only 2 months, we can each grow over a mile of hair. And after a year, we will have lapped the track 30 times with 7 miles of mop top. Hair is one of our body's strongest fibers. Amazingly, a single hair can support a weight of 3.5 ounces. And all of our 100,000 head hairs together can support the weight of 10 tons. And then there are all those little hairs we need to look after, like our eyelashes, We have roughly 200 of them around each eye, but we seldom stop to think how many of them we make. Yet over our lifetime, these tiny hairs could make a trail up to 47 feet long. And speaking of little things, what about our nails? Small but vital. Imagine life without them. Things we take for granted, like peeling an orange or opening a penknife, would be near impossible. But when we're getting ready to step out, they're another attribute we can make shine. As soon as the evening begins, our receptors and sensors are on red alert, and our hormones are primed. Will we hook up with the partner of our dreams? The good news is, our body will be the first to let us know.
The excitement appears first in terms of an adrenaline burst, which will cause sweaty palms, racing heart, faster breathing, and heightened sensation, such that we are ready and responsive.
When we make eye contact, it's only for a few seconds, but it can feel like an eternity. That's adrenaline surging into our system and stretching time for us. Hormones also increase our heart rate and blood pressure. They can turn us into human magnets. And as we draw closer together, we can react to each other's scent, triggered by specialized chemicals called pheromones.
Pheromones are chemicals that are produced from our body, which are dispersed into the air to attract a mate. As a man, you will find a woman more attractive when in the presence of female pheromones. It was said that Marilyn Monroe smelt good, that apart from anything that she might have sprayed on herself, her natural odor was very attractive.
And if the pheromones do their job and the evening goes well, the next step is touch. This is the most intimate of the senses, as we're covered in 500,000 touch detectors. Just take a minute to comprehend how big a number 500,000 is. If you represented each one of these detectors by typing the letter X, then to represent 500,000 of them, you would have to hold the computer key down for 12.5 hours.
Now, all those sensors are in many parts of the body, but over the fingertips they are particularly numerous. On the fingers we can tell 2 points less than a millimeter apart.
That's because we have 3,000 touch detectors in each fingertip. That's a lot of sensations. And another popular place is just as sensitive: our lips. If we get lucky, one study has shown that we can burn as many as up to 26 calories a minute just by kissing. Never mind that there are more microbes in each of our mouths than the population of the United States and Canada combined. In short, we become walking cocktails. Our bodies have made and mixed them, and for good reason. It's so we as a species can survive and multiply. But to do that, we first need to have sex. And that creates a whole new set of intriguing questions. At 10 years old, we couldn't imagine life as a grown-up. Now it's 15 years later, and John and Carly can barely remember what being 10 was like. Is it any wonder? So much has happened. Their bodies are a foot taller, twice as heavy. They're nearly 50 million brain cells lighter, and been controlled by over 200 hormones. Now they've settled down, but John has still been busy. Because ever since puberty, a hormone has been releasing every 90 minutes into his bloodstream, which triggers the making of sperm. Each sperm is nurtured for 74 days before it is due for release. At just 0.05 of a millimeter long, A sperm is somewhat petite, but if all his sperm from one ejaculation were lined up, they'd form a line over 12 miles long. And if you think of each sperm as a car, then one ejaculation would form a traffic jam from New York to London and back 170 times. This is all well and good, but how often does a man put all his sperm to use? How much sex do we really have?
Maybe twice a week.
Not very often.
I'm still a virgin, so.
Oh God, not very often.
Rarely ever.
I probably have sex 2 to 3 times a week.
Never enough. I don't think I ever have enough sex.
If a bed spring represents each time a couple under the age of 30 have sex, then this is how much sex they have a year. On average, it comes out to this many, 112 times a year. And on each occasion, around 400 million sperm will be released. Nearly all of them go the wrong way, or don't swim well enough. Just these 200 get to their destination, and out of these, only one is needed to fertilize the woman's egg. The rest are simply leftovers. A fertile young woman has a 25% chance of becoming pregnant if she aims to conceive in prime time, 2 days before ovulation. And if she is successful, just 13 weeks later at her first ultrasound scan, she can see clearly her baby's development inside her womb. From now on, her heart has to pump 30 to 50% more blood. Her lungs have to take in 15 to 25% more oxygen. And over the 9 months, a mother-to-be will burn around 545,000 calories. That's enough power to boil 10,000 electric kettles. Leading up to childbirth, a woman's body goes through an incredible transformation. This plastic cup is the size of her uterus at conception. And this is the expansion her uterus will undergo up to childbirth. 500 times larger. Yet within 1 month after the birth, a mother's uterus will shrink down to the size of just 1 cup again, weighing a mere 2.5 ounces. After childbirth, a mother will immediately be 12 pounds lighter. Her body experiences a sharp drop in sex hormones, and the volume of blood pumping around her body returns to normal. It's incredible how resilient our bodies are. They need to be with the demands of young children. In his 30s, a man may be past his physical best, but his bones are at their strongest. Take his thigh bone or femur. Guess how many men could stand on it before it would snap?
1,
3,
4,
5,
6,
8,
10.
And here's the answer. The amount that a 35-year-old man's thigh bone can withstand? It can take the weight of about 21 men. That's nearly 2 soccer teams. But after 35, a man's bones will never be as strong again. And although we're gaining in experience and confidence, how will our bodies cope when we pass the ever-looming middle-age danger date? The Big 4-0. Our couple is now 40. It's an age that 30-somethings fear. Both Peter and Emma like to think they're still young, but now they've actually hit middle age. After 40, we start to feel a change in our metabolism. We now need around 120 fewer calories a day. Some of our body's thermostats don't work quite as well, and we tire more easily.
Generally, things tend to wear out as we get old. For instance, our lung ability to suck in air is reduced with age.
The capacity of our lungs may decrease by as much as 40%. And after 40 years, many of the tissues in our bodies, both inside and out, become less supple. For instance, some of us lose elasticity in our eyes and become long-sighted.
The eyeball is less elastic, and so one can't focus. Many people will tell you in their 50s they need to throw the newspaper on the floor to be able to read it.
And this lack of elasticity also affects our skin. From the moment we wake up each day, our body's natural coating is being stretched and contorted. Our skin has been kept elastic our entire lives with the help of collagen, a protein of great tensile strength. But now this is beginning to wear out.
The skin loses its elasticity with age. Pull the skin up and you see mine takes 3 or 4 seconds to go back down to normal because sadly I'm no longer young. If you look at a child, it goes very quickly, and someone who's say in their 80s, you would see it may take 10 or 15 seconds for the skin to go back down.
And in our 40s, our supply of collagen comes under attack. Our skin gets thinner and wrinkled, and its cells become corrupted or senescent.
Senescent cells are poisonous to the body, and they start making lots of enzymes which break collagen down. So senescent cells give you wrinkles.
Luckily, our skin is continually replacing itself. Here is 20 square feet of plastic wrap. That's the amount of skin we shed every 3 weeks. About the size of one of these dry cleaning wrappers. And during our 40s, we'll go through this many birthday suits. $174 of them. We won't grow such good skin again, but although discarded, it has served a valuable purpose. It's been our body's first line of protection against virtually everything we come in contact with. And that includes germs of all shapes and sizes. But our skin can only do so much. It also helps to know where all those germs are. For example, would you rather eat your lunch off your office desk or the toilet seat at work?
There are a lot of germs on the toilet seats.
No, I'll never do that in my life. Never.
It's got to be pretty filthy.
There's so many germs on there.
Yet an office toilet seat has only 49 germs per square inch, compared with 21,000 germs that live on a square inch of our desk. As we get older, dealing with the fallout of a nasty cold germ can certainly seem more taxing. But that's not the only thing we need to worry about. In our 40s, we may also start to find that the occasional hangover, which we could shrug off in our 20s and 30s, can now make the day after not quite so easy to contend with.
Alcohol is really a poison to our body, but the liver can work it and detoxify it so that it can be metabolized. And if the liver gets overwhelmed and the alcohol level starts to rise, that's when the rest of the body begins to feel it.
And the liver isn't the only organ needing to work overtime. This is how much our kidneys deal with. They filter 40 gallons of blood a day, extracting urea and minerals and expelling them in our urine, up to 3 pints a day. In a year, they check over 14,000 gallons worth of blood. But in our 40s, our kidneys' performance decreases by around 2 pints less blood each hour. That's 48 pints, or 6 gallons less every day. And while aging may not affect the digestive system as much as other organs, some of us may become more sensitized to certain foods. Our bowel can suffer a buildup of gas and become bloated. Sometimes the only way of getting rid of the problem is to release it, as wind.
The medical terminology is either intestinal gas or flatus. Those are usually the words that we use that describe a fart. But there's still always something funny about it. Why that is, I don't know. You know, truthfully, in my field, if you don't keep your sense of humor, you can't talk about any of this stuff.
How many times a day do I fart? Maybe like 5 times. Quietly.
Let's say like 10 times a day.
I'm pregnant. That's not fair. Like all day. Maybe 40.
I think I pass gas every 25 seconds.
You're interviewing the king of farts. It's nonstop. It doesn't end. I'm farting now, actually.
By 40, we will have farted over 200,000 times. That's over 15,000 quarts of gas. Enough to fill this inflatable castle. You may think that by now we've just become 40-year-old farts. But no way. Look no further than this. On the left, in the blue shirt, is super fit Theo, aged 18. On the right, in the gray shirt, is Richard, aged 41. Richard can't run, accelerate, bend, or stretch as fast as Theo can. So how come Richard is winning?
Most people think about aging as a downhill process, and that is really not the case. As you grow older, you may move slower, but you're wiser. You have more knowledge.
Now our body has reached 50 years old. But what sort of shape is it in? Well, at 50, we need regular maintenance to keep running smoothly. We need to keep an eye on the lubrication of our 230 joints. We also have to patch up the odd dent. Our outer coating isn't quite as thick as it once was. Our engine still starts okay, but we don't rev quite as hard. But then we're wiser and don't always need to.
You are surprisingly like your car. You're also a mixture of complicated systems, your digestive system, your cardiovascular system, and so on. And with use through your life, these systems start to develop faults and damage, and eventually they don't work as well as they should do.
Our bodies work best at 98.6 degrees Fahrenheit. If we go over this, then we sweat. On a normal day, we lose 170 calories of heat, which is about the same as the calories in one donut. To manage this excess exhaust, we each have 3 million tiny sweat glands. If you unraveled them and put them all together, they would stretch for over 5.5 miles. This system all works very efficiently, but for women during their late 40s, these bodily mechanisms can encounter a hiccup.
Often women will come into me in the clinic and say, "Doctor, I'm having to throw the blankets off, I'm sweating in the middle of the night, I can't sleep any longer, I feel rotten," and many women will feel quite depressed and not very happy with life.
This is the menopause, when many of the hormones which were turned on when we entered puberty are now turned down. A woman's monthly cycle gradually grinds to a halt as the hormones progesterone and estrogen are reduced.
Aging eliminates hormones. It's Mother Nature's way of taking us out. The natural evolution is the fact that once we've raised our children and we're no longer needed, we shouldn't be there. So our hormones leave us.
Hormones leave men as well. It's called the andropause, which can result in a loss of sex drive and graying hair or hair loss. By 50, 50% of men have 50% gray hair. And half of 50-year-old men are at least partially bald.
Speaking as somebody who is slowly but surely approaching that state, what I'd like to tell everybody else out there is that I don't have one less hair on my head than I did when I was a boy. All that's happened is the hair follicles are no longer able to make the sort of long, strong hair that they once did.
The menopause and andropause last only a few years, and some of us are untroubled by them. And we all have one ace up our sleeves, which is a more powerful emotion than any hormone. It's free, it's fun, it's laughter. Julie Whitehead believes in the value of laughter. She runs a workshop to promote the benefits of having a really good laugh. On average, we each chuckle for 6 minutes every day, and it uses 312 of our muscles. A lifetime's laughter uses up 350,000 calories. That's the same as these 1,000 cream cakes. And here are 10 good reasons why we should throw them at each other. Just for a laugh. Laughing reduces stress, protects us from viruses, manages pain, lowers blood pressure, exercises muscles, oxygenates our blood, fortifies the heart, burns calories, boosts our immune system, and fosters intimacy. As human beings, our bodies allow us to do nearly everything. We can swim, go underwater. We can't fly, but we've thought of a way how to. Our bodies allow us to experience an enormous range of sensations, thoughts, and emotions. We have gone where no other creature has been before. As our journey continues beyond our 50s, we'll be celebrating some of our body's remarkable achievements and extraordinary creations, and some of the amazing quantities our bodies process in a lifetime, like the amount of fluid flowing around our head, filling all these barrels, and the quantity of carbon in our body, filling 9,000 pencils. And then there are all the unexpected chemicals which make us up.
接下来，启动一项重大的非军事行动，打造地球上最大型的人工珊瑚礁，见证历时1年的浩大工程。回归大海的航舰，接着播出。